I remember that very famous picture that made the rounds on the internet a couple of years ago. It happened in Germany, and you had a group of right-wing nationalists, I guess, giving out flyers and talking about the dangers of radical Islam. And all of a sudden, you have a guy with a knife appearing, and he starts stabbing people. And he gets caught by some of the organizers. He gets pinned down, and the police immediately arrives. They go after the right-wing nationalists, and they allow the guy with the knife to get free, and the guy with the knife just stabs a police officer. And you guys remember that, because it was very popular on the internet, that picture itself. But what's also interesting, and many people may have missed it, was the conversation that happened around the subject. You see, after a while, some individuals were saying, well, I mean, yeah, of course that happened because they were Islamophobic. So I was like trying to understand, like, hold on. Because like at this point, do the words even mean anything? Like this is what happens when you have the concept creep, right? Like you went from a word called phobia, which means like an irrational fear, and now you're including things that aren't just reasonable to be afraid, but they are the actual lived experiences of the individuals there. So you're basically saying that a group of people that were concerned about radical Islam, they were actually wrong to be concerned about radical Islam, even though you had a radical Muslim with a knife manifesting themselves over there. Like, what is the irrational, right? Like the guy, that terrorist, went out of its way to rationalize the concerns of the people at that little table giving flyers. And so what usually happens with most of these moral movements, right? Like in this case, you had the anti-racist movement that went against Islamophobia, and it was trying to preach diversity, inclusivity, and equity. What usually happens is that it burns out. And one of the things that helps the burning out is exactly what I've been talking about, the concept creep. Like you start from something that most people agree it's bad, but then they keep adding definitions because the word is really effective at stopping conversation and ruining lives, that they want to keep loading the word with more and more ammunition, and at some point it just loses value. And in the case of Islamophobia, it loses value because now it can literally be applied to anything. Like we saw in some nations, even a Christian person that doesn't believe in Islam can be considered, according to how the law is written, and if it was actually applied the way it's written, can be considered Islamophobia. So that's a little bit deranged. But secondly, there is also something that's happening in Europe, and I've been talking about for a long while, that the current system may actually be starting to close. The reason mass migration happens in Europe, it's not necessarily just because like a conspiracy with some people that are standing at a table in dark corners. It's happening because there are incentives for it to happen, and a lot of people are profiting, and the people that are profiting are pushing for it. And so I already explained, you have the politicians, the left-wing politicians that notice how immigrants, when they have children, they vote left. And their children's also vote left. So they're basically importing voters. Politicians make around $10,000 a month, give or take. And so they don't want to lose access to those cash. They don't want to lose access to the privileges that also come with it, like the social networks, the I scratch your back, you scratch my back type of privileges. So like they have an incentive to continue the grift. The NGOs, I mean, they make a lot of money. There's entire groups now dedicated at transporting refugees across borders, right? So they don't want the money to stop flowing. Lawyers, like there's entire group of lawyers usually paid out of taxpayer money from various NGOs and activist groups in order so that whenever you have like a person being deported, they get to step in and they offer their services pro bono, right? Like these people don't want it to stop. Hotel owners, like the list goes on and on and on. The problem appears when it starts affecting the politicians. And so normally if the Islamophobia is in someone else's backyard, well, most voters don't care. But when the voters start noticing the censorship, this is the first thing that hits them. right? It's like they are noticing the censorship. Like they all of a sudden can't complain about a couple of things because there are laws that pass. It's like, wait, hold on a little bit. They start to notice that the economy is going down. They start to notice that the crime is going up. They start to eventually come into contact with the diversity. Well, at that point, you have like more and more people voting right wing. Now, usually what happens in politics is not what people think. And I can give you an example with the situation that happened in Germany and why Germany doesn't have nuclear reactors, right? Most people assume that in politics, you have, let's say, the environmentalists, right? Like they rise up, they go with a platform like we're going to denuclearize if you vote for us. They win the elections and the denuclearization happens, right? Like this is the mentality that most people have. With right-wing movements, okay, you have right-wing movements that are against immigration. People start voting for right-wing movements. Eventually, the right-wing movement wins. They accomplish their mandate, and that's how history works. It doesn't work like that. So if we go back to environmentalism, right? In Germany, there were very strong movements against nuclear power that dated since Chernobyl exploded. So the communists especially, like they tried their best in order to agitate against nuclear energy because they wanted to scare the West into becoming energy dependent, right? So that they don't have nuclear powers and instead they take gas from Russia. Like that was the plan. And in Germany, which was very close to the Soviet influence, it worked. Now, after the Cold War, it kind of died down. But when you had the Fukushima incident, well, all of the nuclear anxiety that was being taught in schools, in movies, in newspapers, it came back up. And so Angela Merkel noticed, and she talks about this, like this is how I know, she talked about it in an interview. She basically says how the Greens were about to take over. And so in order to prevent them from taking over, she stole their platform. Basically said, okay, well, no, like, we will shut down the nuclear power, right? And so notice how history doesn't work that way. Like you would think that you would have a new party that comes with a proposition and they win. Reality is when people in power, they constantly measure things. And when they believe that, okay, it's getting really close now, that's when they flip. And this is what will happen with migration in Europe. Most of the political parties that are in the establishment, they constantly measure society. And when they think, oh, next election, there is a high chance we can lose, okay, we're going to adopt right-wing policy. And you're going to see them, how, they're now starting to talk about immigration quotas, how they're going to start relaxing some of the hate speech laws, how they're going to all of a sudden change their stance. Like things that weren't acceptable to say 5 years ago, you will now see like left-wing politicians talk about them openly and shamelessly as if nothing ever happened. And you would think that, well, the public is going to hold them accountable. History disagrees. Some people will actually hold them accountable, right? Like some percentages will hold them accountable. In some nations, maybe you will actually have like left-wing politicians losing elections. But normally, that's not what happens. Usually, it kind of sits down in the middle. So you're going to have like more of a, I guess like, not even a coalition. You're going to see that the left-wingers on the topic of immigration, they become more moderate. And all of a sudden, they stop talking about, we're going to let everyone in. And they're going to start talking about quotas, like how many. Like there's still going to be migration for a while. But it's going to be more controlled. It's going to be like, okay, how can we integrate? How can we deport the really bad ones and parade them in front of the TV so that we can show we're doing something? And so, like, this is what you're going to expect. And in Sweden, yes, like, they actually banned the concept of Islamophobia. Sweden, which is one of the first nations in Europe that decided to be extremely progressive. And they're now pressuring the United Nations and the European Union to drop the concept altogether. I think they're going to have limited success right now. 5 years from now, yes, I do think that most nations in Europe, except for really the far gone ones, the ones that are mentally ill beyond recovery, are definitely going to start pushing for the Swedish model because they're going to witness a lot of, resentment from the population, and it's kind of difficult to govern when you get malicious complaint from the people and also massive support for any party that's literally different on the immigration issue. They may change the immigrants, by the way. Like, they may stop getting people from Syria. They may stop getting people from Africa. And of course, they may start getting people from India. The Republican Party is actually doing that in the United States, right? So they're like, okay, fine. You don't like Somalians. Well, I mean, we can get Indians. That's fine. The grift must flow, right? Like, ideology can change, but the grift has to be eternal. Let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.